Hello and welcome to Gierok Farms. In today's video, we're going to show you something that we have recently purchased and that was recently delivered to the farm. It's a brand new New Holland little square baler. Dad's already got the chance to try it out over the past week here and get the feel for it, see some of the differences. So we're going to talk about that in this video and explain why we upgraded and some of the pros and cons of this baler versus the old New Holland Square Baler that we had.
So my first one was a 575, and I believe it was built in like 89. And I bought it when Aaron here was only like 2 years old, so that'd be like, that's over 20 years ago. It was like new when I got it. We baled a lot of hay with that. I mean, every year we baled, 8 to 10,000 bales. It was kind of nickel and diming us, and you only got this little short window getting it in. Things gotta go. It was a good baler, and so I decided I want to trade it while everything is still good, because like 3 years ago we did replace quite a bit of knotter parts and different things, but then there was some other little things that were starting to show a few little issues, but we did end up getting really good trade on it. That's why I pulled the trigger on this one.
Personally, I think if you didn't have that other small square baler, you probably would have traded up a lot sooner.
Probably.
But we had some wiggle room there having two balers.
Right, because more than once in the last several years, we actually had to, that one kind of saved the day, you could say. Like I said, you got that little window, you got to go, and you only got them few hours to get it done. So, like when we broke the axle, it was really a simple fix, but it was a Friday afternoon. We weren't getting no axle till Tuesday. Being that we had hay and stuff that we were able to get done and not have that to worry about, or find some other custom operation to do it for you. We drove quite a ways. We went way over to Wausau to see this, and simply because the dealers don't stock these on their lot. There's a few pockets in the state here where there is a lot of small dairies, and these become in demand where they may sell like maybe 2 a year or something. So, I mean, I had to go see it. I got the brochures. I did all my research. And the first thing I look at from my old one to my new one is the weight. It will tell you if they're built heavier or built lighter. So this baler, 5070, my other one was called the 575. It's kind of confusing because they had a 570 that was a little smaller than the 575 back when that one was built, and then they went to this BC5070, which it's the same baler as what I had. The chassis is exactly the same as far as pickup. The pull, all the mechanics of it are exactly the same, and that was the neat thing. We knew what we were getting. They got an air tire here instead of that hard one. That's all simple stuff. Plastic in the PTO shield, which the other one was all steel, which that didn't really make much difference. And I believe it was like maybe 300 pounds heavier. And all I can figure it is the optional items that probably came with that 575 were options then, and now they become standard. So then it adds a little weight. Like there's a cylinder to pick up the pickup head, which we're able to bypass that if I didn't have 3 remotes, because a couple of our tractors don't. And then you could still just go the old way and pick it up by hand, which is nice on this farm. We got such a rough farm, and if I wanted to bale like a road edge or something, I can lift the teeth a little and then not be, messing my teeth up. A swing pole, my other one had that too, with a hydraulic cylinder on the pole. And then that HydroPermatic Tension, which is this item. This was on the old one too, and really what it does is it helps keep the density of the bale the same. All this is doing is putting pressure on this arm and squeezing it more. And then you got your doors in there. My other one had that too, and you can adjust that so it actually gives it a little bit of more resistance, helps make a more firm bale. Depends on the type of hay, how dry it is. Alfalfa versus, like, you get really fine grasses, like orchard grass, like second crop orchard grass. It's hard to get them dense because they're so slippery already. And then this dial here will control that, and usually about a half turn at a time. And once you kind of figure it out, there's a pressure gauge here. Virtually you don't even look at it anymore, because once you get your bales pretty close, you can feel it out, by the day and the type of hay. You've done it so many times. Like I said, it's mostly the cosmetics that makes this baler different. So if you didn't see them side by side and you didn't necessarily see the number on there, you wouldn't be so certain that which one is which.
Another interesting thing before I forget about it, it's not the easiest thing to find a baler like this with a thrower on the back.
But anyway, I called a guy and he said they never come factory with the thrower on, is what he told me. Now, I don't know, maybe they do, but I can kind of believe it because you can put the chute on these yet. You can put those hay baskets, there's accumulators, there's a lot of different, you know, so basically options. The thrower is a huge part of the cost or the mechanics of what we got set up here. So it's everything from here back is not needed. And then you got a pump up front and you got some mechanisms in here to control, like all this stuff. You got your reservoir, that wouldn't have to all be coming with it, which would really, you know, cut the cost if you didn't necessarily need the thrower. You know, one thing I noticed after I started baling and I baled an hour or two, I had an oil leak going, you know, and then you think some fitting wasn't tightened or something, but this here is like a little oil reservoir for the tension, but I think they just filled it too full because I could smell automatic transmission fluid. You know, anytime you're used to fixing something that was leaking, it's either hydraulic fluid, motor oil, transmission fluid, you can smell the difference, and it kind of freaks you out at first until you figure out where it was coming from and why. So then the thrower becomes an option. And another thing, I think a lot of guys don't realize this, is when you put a thrower on these, there's a bracket on the wheel back here. This bracket brings your wheel back about another 4 inches from where it standard is because it offsets your weight. Now you put that big thrower back there and it makes the baler, you know, tip a little or counterweight. So then they bring the wheel back another 4 inches. And I think it's actually brings it out some too. When I went to look at it, the thrower wasn't on it and it looked so naked. And I was like, what is missing on this one that mine's got? And you know, you want to know what you're buying. I mean, everything is so expensive. So I could never buy something like this over the phone. I'd have to go look. So from 89 till now, as far as the knotting and all the main components, they haven't really changed anything. They got the pull, they got this slot in here. And that's so if you want to go down the road, you can swing that pole over. There's a pin in there, but the problem is you can't get the pin out with a bale in the baler. And I don't know if it's the permanently set. See, the old baler's offset. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but you're not as wide. So then your wagon and your tractor and everything isn't in line. You're more likely to get pushed on the hills. So we've always left this one wide. My old one didn't have that adjustment in there. We did put this angle iron in because, like, I don't know, it's maybe 15 years ago, I ended up losing that pole.
Or that's just an added piece of bracing to strengthen that pull up. And then you also kept your inoculant.
As far as the bracing, there was a factory hole here already, and then same thing on the pole. I just drilled the holes in my iron, so it gives it a little more support. And when you got all these hills, you have to do stuff like that. And yes, an applicator, I did take a bunch of stiff measurements on the old one before they took it, because I wanted to be sure that I wasn't, you know, I was going to be familiar with how to put this one on, so I didn't have to be fumbling my adjustments and getting everything fitted. And then a larger twine box, you can hold 8 balls instead of 6, which really, for us, even 4 is not. You know, you just have to be aware to throw 2 more in if you need them, but having 8, so all it is the box is just longer this way.
Because the main thing was for bigger commercial outfits. And
it was an easy thing for a company to do. Yeah. You just add some more stuff.
Yeah, you maybe what, another foot?
So what I've noticed happening, you know, is the little square bale is really, you know, a lot of guys would ask, can you still even buy those new? And I'm not sure if John Deere makes one yet. Not positive, they maybe do. But I think as far as little square balers, New Holland's kind of got it. They've had it for a long, long time. And John Deere is using the same knotter. I know that. They're probably pretty similar on how they can manage. It's just what's happening is the little square bale for the horse and hobby units. And if you want to get a premium for your dry hay, put it in little squares.
Yep.
You know, then you just got to have a different way of managing it. I know we went out to some friends out west there. It was amazing what they had to pay for those things.
I think even around here I've heard as high as $10 a bale, but that's towards the Twin Cities and things like that. In our local area, you're maybe 5 to 7 if it's.
What happens is just so if you're, you know, you're dairy or beef or whatever you are, as far as if your income is the farming from feeding cattle or horses or whatever, you have to look at, is it worth it? You know, there's always a spot where it's better to sell the animals or some of the animals before you start paying too much feeding it out.
Yep.
You know, so you got to weigh that out. But when it comes to the horse, it's a hobby thing. It's kind of like your pets in a way. You're going to pay it if you want to have them. Like up in Canada and stuff, they'll have 3, 4 going at once.
Yeah, on a big pivot or something.
Yeah, they really. That's got to be something to see. Because I believe in the right kind of acreage, there should be no reason you can't put at least 24 to 2,500 and through in a day. We've done up to, I think we've done up to 1,600 in a day. And that's in these hills, you know, crooked fields and
unloading in the middle of the day.
And you got to have a reasonable amount of help. And I remember that day we did finish chopping. This was back when you were pretty small, but I did have some help here. And the windrows were just huge. And the baler was a little newer yet too at that time. It's almost unreal. You know, the other baler will do it. It's gonna take longer. It's just kind of can't handle the windrow.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see is one of those operations down south or out west where they have 3 or 4 balers going and they have those automatic bale stackers, and that'd be cool to see a large scale.
And so like the bale length, you know, you get in the owner's manual, 36 inches is all they recommend to go through that thrower. And I can make them longer, but it puts, you know, somebody has commented on the bale length, you know, little bales. Well, if they go through our convey system better if they're not so big. They're easier to handle, easier to stack, but they're very, very hard on the thrower. You know, for that thing to take that huge thing and chuck it up in the wagon, when you go through several thousand in a few days, that puts pressure on her. So even on my older one, that was one week spot in the whole system is the bearings. They did up the bearings from inch bearings. I actually think they were a metric bearing, but it was really close to an inch on the lower end, and they went up to 1 1/8 inches, which it could probably even be heavier, but I don't think this is something that's so dominant when it comes to these balers in general. It's just something they added to it.
We're talking about the thrower. That's something I want these guys to talk about in the comments. Any of them that have used a square baler, their opinion on the John Deere thrower versus this New Holland belt thrower. Yeah, where it's mechanical more. Or
I worked with guys that had them and stuff. Never had to actually drive one, so I'm not.
I think if you hate having to adjust belts once they get really wore out, that might.
I got a feeling they got the pros and cons, because even John Deere would put. I suppose it's painted green, but this thrower is on a John Deere. I'm not 100% positive if it's exactly the 72 thrower, but it is a belt thrower. So another thing I noticed, there's some bracing in here. There's just little things they added to help, you know, that where there was maybe some weak spots where the welds would give eventually or something. We knew what we were getting here. That was the best part. I knew what this machine already was, as long as it was the same. This is my first new baler that I've ever owned. I got one, that 273, it had the wide teeth. I know you guys the teeth were like, I don't know, 4 to 5 inches apart. And then they went to what they call the super sweep, which is pretty much standard on them now, where there's more teeth. But that was my first baler, a 273. Virtually my dad's first one. I was probably only about 8 years old when he bought that. Before that, we used to snake them off a 46 International, if I'm not mistaken. I was too small to even do it. I was riding a rack trying to help. But then we got that thrower, and then when I came here, I had that baler for the first year or two. And then I ended up getting the 273 I got now. And then we had 2 balers the same for a while. And then I found the 575. So then I was able to sell the older one. But the interesting thing is I've noticed back in the 70s and 80s, everybody made little squares yet. It wasn't all little squares, but most were that were dairying. In the 90s, when a lot of, they were selling out, a lot of these small farms were stopping, there was a little square baler on every auction. I remember one week there was 3 to 4 auctions within 20 miles. They all had a nice little square baler on. If you didn't get the one, you could get the other. So they were almost giving them away for a while there. As the years went on, of course, less and less guys selling out. There's less farmers to sell out. So to find a good used one, getting more and more rare. And then the older ones are just getting older. Some of them aren't getting kept up right. So I believe that 575 has never got rained on unless we were racing home from the field getting caught in a thunderstorm. It's maybe twice in 20 years. And the funny thing, I was just thinking after they took it and they put her on the truck and took her back to their lot, I thought, yeah, that baler got rained on for the first time in 20 years. So it's kind of like against your religion to let them get wet. Because all that chaff, it just sticks up in there. It's gonna make problems.
Yeah, for sure.
So the first day of using it, I did do a little video, and he'll put it in there for you guys to watch. And the first hay going in, it's kind of exciting. And you're thinking, okay, now I got rid of my old faithful in a sense. Is this thing gonna tie? Is it gonna work? We had like 12 acres of hay laying there, and it ended up being kind of cloudy earlier in the day, then the sun came out way late, so it was only about 2 hours of baling time I had, and sure enough, it wasn't time. And not surprise, but then you got to put your thinking cap on. You think you're not going to be able to call this company. Nobody's coming out right at the last second. So I did see a comment where someone did buy the latest model. So this is the 5070. I think now they just changed the logo, and I kind of like it, really. They call it the 275. Talk about confusing us. Now, way back when I was a kid, there was a 275. You know, built before the 273s are right in their era, right at that time. And so if you'd be calling for parts, you have to specify if it's the latest model or not. But so anyway, the guy did say he did own one of them, and he said he had knotter trouble. Now there's about 500 little adjustments here, so I took along a bunch of tools because I knew that was going to happen. I mean, it's almost a given. They got all this paint on the bill hooks, you know, your twine holders, and there's different adjustments, and it's not hard to do. It's just knowing what to do to correct what's not going wrong. So it wouldn't tie at all, and here we got one continuous long bale going through, and of course coming out busted. Well, there's this little tab right here, this nut right here. Well, it was tight, but it wasn't tight enough, so that kind of came out of place. So when your bale length, so that's this device, when it falls into this groove, that arm here engages the knotter, you could say. So nothing here is moving until it does that. So it says it wants to tie. Then within a split second, this whole thing makes a revolution. But this little tab was still holding that little trigger. It was almost like, you know, like the safety was on. It couldn't tie. So anyway, that was an easy fix. And then it came loose on me twice after that. But you always get like, well, how tight do you want to tighten that nut before it's just going to break right off? So I think I got that now secured down to where it's going to stay. And then one of the bill hooks wasn't taking a knot off one time, and again, all this paint on there, and you'd have to actually bend the knife arm. It's a piece of cast, and it's kind of freaky when you pull your whole knotters up and then you get on there with a hammer and you're pounding on that, and that's the books all say that's what you do. This unit in here is definitely something that got mastered a long time ago. They're still using the same layout. So compared to some of the smaller models, the knotting system set up exactly the same way, except some of the components aren't quite as heavy. They probably wear faster or something over time. And so that first day of baling was a little bit getting on and off the tractor, and then it's tying, then it didn't tie, and then I think the second day I went, everything ran like a top.
So there you go. That's Dad's first impressions of the new baler. Super grateful that he was able to make a deal, get a good trade in, and get this baler here. It's crazy to think about. This is a large portion of the feed source here on the dairy farm. I'm sure it will last for plenty of years now.
This is actually my favorite machine to run. But again, it can be very nerve-wracking because of all the mechanics that go with making hay, and then of course the weather. The weather's everything. We do get the weather, but to have the hay mowed at the right time, it's all that timing. You know, if you didn't mow it soon enough, or if you mowed it too soon, you might end up getting rained on or whatever. Or do you wait another day? Is it going to rain? Is it not going to rain? Yeah, and then one more thing on the newer models, which that's the one I wanted. I like the way the new logos are, but they were quite a bit more money, and it really is the exact same baler. So I thought, that wouldn't be very smart to do that. But they painted the pole yellow. And that is a clear sign of it being the newer model and the new decals and stuff. There wasn't one anywhere near us that was available to purchase, but I could have got one.
Yeah.
So I probably had to wait 6 months.
If any of you have an opinion on these balers, leave them down in the comments. Any preventative maintenance or upgrades that you guys have made to them that have worked out, or just old stories of the old ones and how long they've lasted for you guys. And also, if any of you have the brand new model that Dad's talking about with the yellow pole, we'd be interested to hear about that too.
I had one guy, he did comment, and I don't know if it wasn't too long ago, and I thought, wow, somebody's got one, and he said he had nothing but knotter trouble with it. And I guess we don't have a lot of information on what the situation was, but it can get to be a nightmare. And maybe sometimes it's even myself, after a year goes by or two since I've been really working on them, I get kind of like rusty with what to do. And it's not that it's difficult, it's just maybe like a computer. If you've never done it before, you're gonna be lost. Most of it is just fine adjustments, and so you're looking at what the knot is and what the knot looks like and what it's doing to get past the problem, I guess.
So let us know your opinion down below in the comments. Any stories, leave those down there as well. But I think that's gonna be it for the video. I'm sure you guys will be seeing plenty more of this baler in action now. We'll have to put some more videos together of baling, and
we got straw to bale yet, so that'll be fun. That stuff usually slips through so nice. And
thank you all for watching. Thank you for sticking to the end. That's gonna be it for the video. Make sure to stay tuned for our future baling videos with this baler in action.